Welcome to today's Life Coach Pod show. It's going to be a little bit serious today. We have a serious subject. We're going to talk about grief in the time of coronavirus. We have an expert with us, so I'm really happy about that. One of our frequent audience members, Donna, had recommended our guest, Andrea. How do I say it?
Oh, you'll get that story later too.
Okay, good. We have Andrea with us, and we're going to start off the show as usual with a little bit of updates. And I have to tell you about my rough morning. So here's the drama that's been unfolding on our street, at our house. It's been absolutely keeping me so engaged with being quarantined. You will see there, Mr. Chirpenstein. He and his wife were looking for a place to set up housekeeping. At first, I thought they were going to try to build a nest, but they weren't happy with the location, so I had to go ahead and make some improvements. That is the box that you see there. Today, things got crazy. I figured there were eggs in the nest. They left for a minute, so I was able to get pictures. Yes, there are eggs, but here's the drama part. I heard all of a sudden a mourning dove. Now, I know blue jays and crows and some other birds will go eat eggs. So I started to get really agitated and worried. And so I was watching this mourning dove, doing all my research, and then, of course, called my mom, who I always call with bird problems, and she pointed out that mourning doves like to steal nests. I did not know this was a thing that they do. So I'm freaking out, going, no, you're not stealing the Chirpenstein's nest. They've worked way too hard on it. This was a lot of effort. So I went ahead and put up, and you can see with the pink arrow, put up a different facility listing. It's a new property available to the mourning doves now. So now I'm trying to make sure that the mourning dove can see that there's a place for them to nest that's different from where the Chirpensteins are, which is there with the gray arrow. And I did manage to really work out the social distancing. I just want to bring that up because I know that's on everybody's mind right now. So this is the drama unfolding at our house. And I don't know if the mourning doves will move in, but it's certainly a lovely prefabbed nest. And I did it just like they like it, full of junk in there so they can make it comfortable. So let's just hold out hope. The doves have been back since I created all this nonsense. They have been back a few times. So hopefully it will work and hopefully they'll settle in. Meanwhile, when it's not drama, I'm just fixing the slide. It is Friday, April 10th, for anybody who's forgotten what day of the week it is. Of course, Friday, so go crazy tonight. Maybe a bottle of wine, not just a glass. Who knows? It's so hard to live large when every day is the same. So for those of you keeping track, it's the 41st day of March, just how long we've been quarantined forever. So there you go. Time is passing. I have a couple interesting things to talk about. So this morning, a weird thing happened across the street. I heard a loud crash and then kind of yelling, but like ow kind of yelling. I looked outside and a homeless man had fallen down across the street. It's in front of some garages. And I raced to the front door because he was clearly older, like maybe in his 70s, if not older. And I said, are you okay? And he was struggling. And he said, I can't get my walker up. His walker had fallen down. So of course I'm double panicked because number one, he's in trouble. And number two, oh my God, how am I going to stay clean? So as it turned out, I ran in the house, got some protection for myself, which was really weak, but I knew he needed help. And then I ran across the street to help him and told him he had to back up. I'm like, sir, you need to stand back against the wall. Can you stand? And he could. And then I got his walker uprighted, which was really difficult actually. And then he looked like he was still in trouble. And I couldn't tell if he was bleeding. I wasn't going to get that close. So I came in and went ahead and called, I didn't call 911. I called non-emergency and just asked if they could come by and do a welfare check because I wasn't sure if he was bad or not. The upside of that is he is okay. And moreover, the first responders are super hot. So just keep that in mind if you ever have to call first responders. It's made for a wonderful morning to see those nice, healthy young men, and there were no women on this truck out there working, but it reminded me, and it goes with the story that also came out of Santa Cruz yesterday. It reminded me of the story in 1964, and I certainly was not contemporary for this story, but I remember learning about it in school when a woman named Kitty Genovese was murdered outside of her apartment in New York City. The way the story went, which wasn't exactly true, but is that a number of bystanders had heard her screams. With more research, it turned out that they didn't really understand she was in trouble, but she ended up being raped and murdered because of the bystander effect. And that is when you assume somebody else has got this, and it's not true. And what I'm thinking about a lot, what I have been thinking about a lot, even when my own daughter takes a walk at night, is that we're all inside our houses and we are seeing what's going on outside, but we may not be paying attention because outside has become bad. And so I wanted to and what happened in Santa Cruz yesterday is that a kid, I'm not going to blame him for being out on his bike, and I'm not going to blame him for carrying money with him, because that's what kids do when they first get money. They're so proud to carry it in their wallet. But a kid in Santa Cruz was robbed by another kid, beaten up and robbed by another kid. But what's worrisome about the story is that, did people see it? Did people watch? Did people see this thing go down and not go out and help the kids because we're all so afraid of getting sick? And I can't think of anything worse right now than this fear of dying from COVID, which, again, that's not a high percentage, folks, but I get it. It's still terrifying, and not helping our neighbors. So I just wanted to bring up the bystander effect. I wanted to have it in your consciousness to think about, and probably if I had prepared better in my own mind about what I would do if somebody needed help ahead of time, I would have responded more effectively this morning. I really was caught off guard, but now I'm going to rehearse that in my mind and know where I'm going to have a pair of gloves by the door. I'm going to have these things ready. So if somebody did need help outside, I'm going to put a mask by the door too, even if it's one of my homemade ones. So if somebody did need help, I could rush out to help them. So that's my first speech about the bystander effect. The second is about the U.S. Post Office. If you guys, this is a story I just want you guys to tune into because it's a big deal, and here's why it's going to be a big deal. If we want to have voting by mail, we're going to need our postal service. But more fundamentally, and this is what many people forget because it may not be your experience, that's how a lot of people now get their meds. It's how most retirement checks, most Social Security checks, pension checks, all kinds of services are provided through the Postal Service that we take for granted or forget about our neighbors who consider this vital, especially our seniors. Just the sweet card that you want to send to grandma because you can't be with her right now. Those kind of things are going to fall away if we lose our Postal Service. Supposedly it's protected in the Constitution, but that hasn't seemed to protect any of us these days. So I want to bring it up because, again, you may have to say something to your representative and make sure that your voice is heard on this, that we need the U.S. mail. It particularly serves rural communities where Amazon and those guys take their sweet time or charge an arm and a leg for the extra service. So please follow the U.S. Postal Service story. And I absolutely think it's a foundational part of our service, and it should not be privatized, because we all know what happens when things get privatized. Prices go up and service goes down, and it becomes, again, an exclusive service for those who can pay. And the Postal Service has been accessible for everybody for our lifetimes. It would be a shame to lose it now because our nation is in a big fat mess. Okay, and then the last story, which is somehow eerily appropriate for today. In New York City, people who've died from coronavirus and have not been claimed by anyone are being buried right now on Hart Island. I don't know that I ever thought I'd ever see anything like this in my lifetime. I understand that there's always been what they call it, pauper's grave kind of thing, where you are buried if there's no one to claim you. But the idea that we are now doing this en masse on Hart Island, if nobody's claimed their person, and we also know there's confusion going on, so I'm not even sure they're getting it right, but again, not my problem. But it's a time where things are definitely gone sideways. And if you haven't looked at these pictures, take a moment, maybe however you connect with the universe, take a moment and say a prayer, because this is hard, and it's extremely upsetting to look at if you are anyway empathetic and connect with what's going on in the United States and around the world right now, which is an interesting segue to our guest today. But before I introduce her, I just want to let you know we have shows coming up next week. I'm going to be talking about how to build your personal brand, part 2. Part 1 was this Monday. I'll be back in it on the coming up Monday. Shelley Carpati will be here to talk about resumes and your career in this weird time. And then I've got a couple other guests coming, but I need to confirm them. And of course, Laurel will be here to talk about what's in a name, branding, how it happens behind the scenes. So that's slated for next week. But today, as we move into a serious conversation about a serious thing, I'd like to introduce Andrea Lott, who is a bereavement counselor. And it was interesting when I first spoke with her because she is hearing it and seeing it. And for me, I think I've mentioned, lost someone in my extended family, my community family, and I can't go hug her husband. She died over a week ago, and I can't go see him. And so we have Facebook. That's like kind of it, which just doesn't feel the same. And it certainly doesn't, it doesn't feel like it's finished. Like I just don't know what to do. So I'm going to let Andrea introduce herself a bit more, and let's dig into this rough topic. Welcome.
Hi, Jennifer. Hi, everybody. It's funny that you mentioned that you can't reach out and get a hug. You know, one of the things in our grief group, and we'll talk about that, is the touching, the hug. We like to give a hug, and so many people in their grief and just period, and now especially, need a hug. I mean, I sometimes hug my dog. I mean, I have my spouse, my husband, I can hug him, but you know, but it's important to have that physical contact. But I told you I would give you the name story. My name is Andrea or Andrea or Andy. And the reason it's those three is my 5th grade teacher said the correct French pronunciation is Andrea. So it's Andrea. Then I go home and my family, I'm at home growing up, I was Andy. And my husband, who I'm Andrea, he calls me Andrea. So I'm whichever one, as they used to say, just don't call me late for dinner.
That's right. I was going to say, answer to anything.
Either one of those. But, I'm an older bird. I went back to school. I want to say 2015, I graduated. I went back for my master's because I was an athletic director for almost 20 years. I think, I'm not sure if it still is, but I actually was an 11-man football coach here in California. And I wound up coaching a winning team, but now you're seeing more women in football coaching. I went back to school because from sports, I had the athletes coming into my office and telling me their problems. They were hurting. I am a military spouse. My husband's retired Navy. Go Navy.
Go Navy. Yeah.
And so while he was doing that, we were stationed on Guam, actually, and that's a popular name right now. People hear that name now because that's where the aircraft carrier is stationed off of, or is ported off of, is Guam. Sorry, I have not a chrono tickle, but I've got
I know we say, no, I'm just choking on my spit. Leave me alone. Yeah. Yeah, the USS Roosevelt is there now where the soldiers are able to get help.
Yes.
Okay.
And anyway, so I worked with a lot of youth there, and I guess you could say I've always kind of worked with people. But what really did it for me is I had a kid once that came to me and said, I want to kill my family or kill my dad, and I want to kill myself. And I wound up talking him through that, but that kind of changed me. And so undergrad was organizational management because I thought, oh no, it's going to stay sports. But I eventually went, like I say, back to school, but I have a master's in professional clinical counseling. I actually have a minor in life coach. And I'm a CPR instructor. So what you said, and I'm going to tie this in here, the CPR instructor, when you said you went to help, that's that good Samaritan, and that is what we need to do. But having prepared and I don't have it with me, but it's a keychain where you have your mask and your gloves. And if you have that by your door, or actually, on your person, but in these days and times, maybe have it hanging on the door even. And I would even go so far as to say a first aid kit in your home that works, because one of the things, I have 2 grandkids, and we tell them, we don't want you guys getting hurt, because the last place I want you to go is the ER.
It's true.
It's really bad. And for any of us, a simple fall in the yard, we have to be careful because we don't want to go to the ER. But anyway, so as things spun, I wound up at Adventist Health because of a friend. This friend said, hey, you would do great, because I like loving on people. And one of the things that I call my calling is to provide soul care, caring for a soul. All of us have a soul, and to care for that. And so I just didn't think ever that I would be involved in bereavement or grief or hospice. Those were words that terrified me. I've shared with my group that we have. Um, there was a time where every day I would go out, oh, I'm going to die today. Oh, the D word. It just was a terror for me, and actually was a little bit of a problem. And through some therapeutic work myself, and some distraction, I didn't have to die every day, because that's kind of what it's like. But that's how people hurt with the different mental problems they can have. But anyway, so here I am, and I learned about it, and that is what did it. I started attending the group when I first started, and I started working on my grief. My sister, the middle sister, there's three of us. I'm the youngest, and then the oldest, and then me. My middle sister is on hospice in Ohio. You talk about COVID now and the restrictions. Last week, she had to go to a hospice home. And in a hospice home, it's where they're not able to be managed, whether it's their pain or whether the caregiver is fatigued. It's a place where they go for respite so that they can be attended to. I equivocated that with a nursing home. And of course, again, with COVID now, we hear nursing home, we think, okay, they're getting carried out.
Yeah, it's just a trap, right? It just feels terrible.
Exactly. Well, it was interesting because she actually did well, but I got to feel not only her being in hospice and understanding that and being able to relate that with those that I work with and that I serve, but my grief, I was thinking, oh my gosh, if she passes away, I can't go. And yeah, some modes of transportation are still working, but so many, you can't. And okay, I don't like to fly. Anyway.
Although you could have the plane to yourself, but I understand. Yes, doesn't change it for you. If you don't like to fly, you don't like to fly.
Train, and that's a little long. But anyway, it was a real thing. And so, yes, now that's pretty much all I do. I used to do social work with the hospice component, which meant I went to the homes and worked with the families and worked with the patient. And now I just do the bereavement coordination and the volunteer coordination. And on that note, I'm going to put out a plug. We are needing volunteers, and you hear it on the news, not having face masks. And there's a need for people to make face masks and get them to your hospice agencies, get them to the hospitals, because just even for the nurses' families, they don't have time to sew. They are truly work. Our nurses are amazing what they face every day. And in hospice, you go into people's homes, you don't know what you're going to find. It's home care and hospice, but you're in a home. So it's not like someone coming to you at the hospital where you can sort of say, whoa, let me triage this, let me do it. You don't know what you're stepping into. And so I call them, superheroes, because they go out and they take care of people. They take care of hurting, dying, and it's first line. And what we're talking about today, grief, bereavement, loss, is not a popular topic in our country, in our actually culture. We don't talk about it.
Right.
And when we do, we talk about this in our group a lot. There's the little sayings like, oh, they're in a better place. oh, at least they're not suffering anymore. Those type of things. And then the grieving person is told, be strong. You'll get over it. You gotta go on. All these things. And it's hard, but we do need to talk about it. It's not just something that happens and the next day it's done. Grief can last for years. Grief can last for a lifetime. And it's all about whether you're able to go forward with your grief. As we tell those in the group and those that are in grief work, the next thing, keep doing the next thing. If any of you have ever been, have experienced a loss, you'll find very common things like extreme fatigue, a mind that, oh my gosh, I don't know where I put this or what did I do with that? It's a fog. We refer to it as grief brain. It's a difficult course, and it's physical. You know, you wonder why people are so tired that are going through grief and loss, and it's because it takes every fiber of your being. We liken it often, or I would like to liken it to if you have a traumatic amputation. When that happens, when it first happens, especially if it's traumatic, okay, you got to call 911, you got to get help, you got to, you know, you're witnessing things yourself, you know, you got the blood, and if it's spurting this way, it's really dangerous, you know, but you have to tend to that. So you get it cauterized, you get it wrapped or whatever to stop the bleeding, you stop the bleeding. Then you have to maybe have, well, not maybe, if it's a traumatic amputation, you're going to have surgery. There's going to be recovery involved. And if you take that, like that grieving person who suddenly lost their loved one, you were planning on Thanksgivings and Christmases and Easters, and you wake up one day and you go to bed that night and your loved one's gone. And it's like, now what do I do? It's a traumatic. Just because the person you love is not physically with you, it doesn't stop the emotional attachment. The physical loss doesn't stop the emotional and mental loss. It's just like they're still there. You just can't feel them. You can't touch them.
So we see a community like New York, and I know it's going to hit other communities with this kind of level. When you talk about that fog of grief, and then the fatigue, and in this case, even if it's not happening in your family, I know what I see posted, what I see people talking about is a lot of people are feeling it as if they've lost their own loved ones because it's so catastrophic. Yeah. And it just keeps going on and on and on. I'm so curious about how does a community heal, and what expectations should we have for a community that's going through this kind of loss? Because it feels like rushing back to work is not the right thing, that the slowness and this quiet time right now is actually probably appropriate.
You know, you speak of appropriate. We talk about in grief work that your grief needs to be witnessed. All right. And one of the things with that picture you showed, I made sure to look at it. I looked at the different boxes, because each one of those boxes is a story, is a relationship, is a love, is a loss, is a life. And it needs
to cry. I feel the same when I look at them. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, but what does our society tell us to do? Okay. Yeah, just, you know, put it out of sight. No.
Yeah.
Get it behind you. Because if you look at that, it'll bring emotions. Okay. Because and emotions means we care.
Right.
You know? So what I think needs to be done, I like it. We watch different news stations and I do look at it. Why do I? Because I want to witness their grief. I want that loss, that life to be validated, if nothing more than in my attention to hearing their name. In grief, where we ask as we introduce, for them to say their loved one's name. When you have a mass grave like that, I mean, what were their names?
I,
What are,
yeah,
yeah.
it just, I mean, yeah, here I
Yeah.
go crying, but
And
that's how it feels though. It just
yes.
anonymizes, these people because they haven't, it's so god awful. They haven't been claimed. Like what, their loved ones might even not even know that they were hit. I mean, the way this thing's going down.
Exactly.
It,
And
it,
now,
yeah.
Jennifer, let me tell you what else you have there. You have a little bit of a traumatic thing because you witnessed that. Even though you weren't there, we're not in New York, but we witnessed it. So there's a place in some of us that an emotion flows, which says, I care. And then there's a place in some, they're just like, oh, well, that's dangerous because when we care, we help, we engage, we are a community. And that is what we need. We need to be a community and not just a bunch of strangers. We need to come together and help each other, especially now. And again, with me being an old bird, I've lived through something. When you said 64,
Yeah.
I vaguely remember hearing about that, but I have lived through some times in our country, in our world. And with this being a pandemic, this is a first for all of us. There's nobody on this planet that has experienced this before because it's a first. And we need to respond to it. So we're processing a lot of stuff. We're processing grief. When you observe someone else, if they're able to speak to you, you need to allow them, we need to allow them to tell their story, to express their emotion and not sit and go, oh gosh, it's been a year, or that's way over in New York. It'll never happen here. Practicing social distancing, like in a rural community like ours, you would say, oh, we'd never get around it. Oh, nobody here. I heard so much of that. But all it takes is one to go somewhere else, to be near someone else. They go, you'll never know. So, it's a good thing to have a caring heart and to allow someone to process and talk through their grief.
So even, it sounds like, if I understand what you're saying, it even heals us a bit in the exchange of sharing those feelings. If you're listening to the person who had the loss, so we can't be together hugging each other, which is, what I want to do for Uncle Steve. If we can't be hugging each other, at least we can listen to each other. And I've heard it helps to share our memories of the loved one as well.
Yes. There are some that will appreciate a funny story. You might wonder, how could somebody 1 minute be crying and the next minute they're laughing? There's stories, but that's part of the healing. It really is. Even my sister and I, and though she is, entering that tunnel, as we call it, or the valley, we laughed. We lost my mother and my grandmother. Okay, when my grandmother passed, and I've told this story before, my mother is at her casket there, in our culture, there's the wake and everybody's, woo, which is good. But we're there, all of us there, and my mother's just crying bitterly. And she says, oh, mother, I'll see you soon. My sister and I, what? Now, my mother, I want to say not even maybe 75, 70, not much longer. She passed away. And we're there. Here we are again. Oh, just bitter crying. We kind of had a moment because we looked at each other. I'm not saying it. So we make a point of that. But again, it's those stories, telling the stories of how they lived. We talk in our group. One of the things that I encourage my bereaved with is actually it's attributed to, and I need to make sure I give him credit, David Kessler. He's a leader in grief and loss and bereavement. And he wrote a book. It's called Finding Meaning. And I call it Purpose in Living On. And that meaning is, what do you do with that loss? What, to validate it, to make it mean something. We've all heard of MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Drivers. How did that get started? Mothers lost their kids who were killed by drunk drivers. So I say, and a lot of our last session, they got a baton. I say, what is the purpose that you can take, or what is it from that loved one that impressed your heart where you can't stop crying because you can't stop loving them, you can't stop emoting them? I say, well, that's like a baton. My mother passed on a baton of love. She loved everyone. She volunteered. She did all these things, and I saw her carry herself, a woman of dignity, pride, but yet softness and love. And I say, that's the baton. I have a baton. On my baton is music, a love for music and sharing that. So when we're running our race, okay, I'm going to touch you with a little love. That's from my mom. I'm going to touch you with a little love here. And then one day we're going to take that baton and we're going to pass it on, because it's going to be our time. And whoever that loved one is taking that baton, I was a track coach too. Whoever takes that baton, you hope that they're going to run with it. And guess what they're running with? They're running with a whole legacy, a whole bunch of family.
You're killing me.
Everybody. And it's a wonderful thing.
It's beautiful. What you're saying is so beautiful. It's just killing me. I'm such,
no,
sorry, I'm easy.
It's a wonderful thing to say. And that's another thing we encourage in group, because again, other people are uncomfortable with someone's emotions. Other people are. We're okay with laughter and, the pleasant things. But when someone's really showing how they feel, some people can't stand it for you to get up next to them and just say, "You're amazing." They're like, "Oh, no, I'm not." Don't because they can't handle it. When we all know sometimes that's all somebody needs, is for somebody to tell them, "You know what? You're amazing. You're awesome." So
being seen and being heard. How fundamental is that at a time when the world's a little bit quiet, except for some of us, not everybody. A lot of people are living in chaos right now as well. But for some of us, the quiet is a good time to realize seeing our friends, even if it's through video or whatever that is, but seeing each other is really powerful.
And this is something I hope anyway, will go on when we're able to go back to our routines and being out, because this is connection. I am going to be interested in your next pod with your brand and all that, because I see so many things where people can help people that need people to shop for them, and not somebody that's a stranger, but somebody that can shop for you. Older people who don't know how to use a computer, a laptop, their iPhones. They don't know how to do it. And they, quite frankly, they don't want to learn how, because it's just, I'm never going to get it. But yeah, they can. Yeah, they can.
Well, I know now, and we have telemed appointments now. The doctors want these, and I'm thinking there's a whole generation that's not going to have a clue how to do this.
Exactly.
So yeah, we do need to help one another. And I know Nextdoor, the application Nextdoor that connects neighbors on the internet, has been a great way to find people with strengths. Nextdoor this has been the app that's probably brought communities together better than ever, because it's really with your neighbors. And I know I've been asking neighbors for trades, like, can I borrow your tools in exchange for some lemons? Because we have a lot of lemons right now, but I just need to borrow a tool. I don't need to go buy one. I just need to borrow one, which normally there's just ways we can help each other. We've seen masks developed, people making the masks and things. Other supplies, I have elastic, but I don't have fabric, all those kinds of things. Yes. So that connecting, I really hear you on the connecting. And I don't know what it's like. My family's not big for funerals. We just aren't a big funeral family. But for people who are used to that ceremony, like my best friend's Creole, that's like an important Like
Yeah.
when you described all the phases, I've been to those. There's like a whole thing that happens.
Yes.
So
Yes.
what can people do to fill that loss when they can't have the structure, or the ceremony, or the.
And I'm glad you asked that, because that is one of the things we're being creative now. I'm, so maybe you can tell I'm a person of faith, and this being Passover, I'm thinking like with the grandkids, just to remember, just to take a moment. We were thinking maybe Easter morning, we would get up before the sun comes up and walk and have time that way. For a loved one, okay, for instance, with my mom, we would take out a candle, maybe have some of her favorite things that she liked, a meal.
Oh, yeah.
I always had to think about
Oh, food.
lotions and
I
that.
know.
Yeah. And
Food
in,
is
in
important.
most in most cultures, and I need to, sorry. Speaking of which, can you hear that? Okay. That was my brother-in-law. I have the bat phone in case my sister, but it's okay. It's
Okay.
okay.
All right.
But you take whatever it was and you find a way to memorialize, and you have that time with them in doing that activity. I know some that do balloons, some, and again, we can't go out so much now. So I would say having their favorite food, talking about them, telling stories, taking out pictures, doing a collage. My favorite therapeutic technique would be writing. So journaling, writing a letter to them.
Oh, I
These are
like that. Like, yeah, letter. And it's almost, you almost are describing, when I'm listening to you talk, I almost think almost of an altar. I don't mean it in a,
I
I mean it
understand. I
in a
understand.
really positive way, which is,
Mhm.
here are some of my favorite pictures. Here's some things that my person loved. Here are
Mhm.
some ways I can kind of activate them in my world, especially if they went to the hospital and I didn't get to see them ever come back. So I can kind of create
Yes.
a
Yes.
healthy, positive shrine. And I love the favorite food as a celebration and a time to come together.
Yeah.
It's always our older people that have the good foods. Like, oh, my
Oh my gosh.
besties.
I
Are,
tell families
yeah.
as their loved one is crossing over, make sure while they're still able to talk, get those recipes, because you're going to want
Oh,
that.
yeah.
Get recipes, get them to tell that story over and over again. And it helps them in the passing, and it helps the family in the remembering. But you find creative ways. There are a lot of resources online where you can just even Google it, ways to remembrances for a loved one who has passed. And I'm sorry. Okay, I just had to make sure. I had to
She's
read.
okay. Yeah, I know. Well, you're sitting there real time. I want to make sure she's
Yeah,
okay.
no, she's okay. She's
Okay,
okay.
good. So
But
and I think you hear you saying very, very clearly that even if you aren't experiencing the loss immediately, but if you are feeling the loss from others, like when we look at the people being buried who are going in those pine boxes being in New York, like even if we're feeling that, it's okay. We have permission to grieve that. That's actually healthy to see those people and to feel that grief.
because indirectly, you are grieving that. You are witnessing something that is grievous, okay? And it is affecting your spirit. And I'm not sure what our time is, but one of the things I really wanted to kind of end on, and if I'm
Yeah,
allowed to share my screen, I don't know if you've ever heard of the
you can share your screen too. Just go ahead and hit the.
anchoring heart technique. And I
No.
think in this day and time, it's a very good thing. And I can send this to you where you can, anybody I guess can
Yeah, I'll post it in the blog
get
so
it.
we can
Yes,
have that.
yes.
You can absolutely share your screen and we can see what you're.
Okay, I'm gonna make sure I have it keyed up. I do.
I know
Um,
that's mine. That's my
yeah,
challenge.
here we go. I have to share screen. Sorry.
Okay.
Share screen. I am sharing screen. Host disabled attendee screen
Oh,
sharing. So you.
it is. Let's see. Advanced. Great. Okay, let me just see. All participants. Okay, here we go. That should try it again.
Okay, there it goes.
Yay.
Okay.
Okay, good. Technology, folks.
Oh, I love it.
Oh,
This
okay.
is
Anchoring
called,
heart.
let's see if I
Okay.
can make this bigger. There we go. This is called anchoring heart technique. And if I can read quickly, the anchoring heart technique is it's a somatic practice, and it grounds people and helps them to feel more secure. You know, I listened to some of your earlier podcasts, and there were people who were saying, man, just hearing this news is disconcerting to me, and I can't handle it. There's a lot of that now. There's a lot of things like that. Well, what it does, and I'll do this quickly, it comforts your feelings, but when you are centered, and you're calm, and that's a breathing involved, the deep breathing. Here, let me get my whole screen. There we go. Um, you want to feel open and relaxed when you're centered. But when you're beside yourself, your anxious energy, it rises, you're anxious. And sometimes you feel it in your shoulders, you feel it in your chest usually. In clinical work, we would ask, you know, where are you feeling your pain, your discomfort, your anger, or
Oh,
your
yeah.
hurt? And
Okay.
people will often clutch their chest, some their stomach. But this anchoring heart technique, what you want to do, and again, I'm not getting into any mystical anything here, but there's 3 steps. You want to anchor your heart firmly, and as it was in that picture, with one hand or 2, and you breathe deeply in and out. And just for a few seconds, you want to find a place where you're calm and you're comfortable. And it helps you with using your hands to apply pressure there. This is used with a lot of veterans, as you can see here, helping them to, in those that have been combat veterans, especially, to quiet themselves, especially in a place where they've not been able to talk about the atrocities and the things that they've seen and things maybe they've done. So again, the anchoring heart, as we go on down, you can use it with another. And you always get permission before you do that. Can
Oh, I
I?
like that. Yeah, you could just make that contact with another human being and just, especially
Yes,
someone who's struggling or scared.
yes. And all you're doing is just placing it there, and let's breathe deeply in and out. And you're calm and soothing, whether you allow them to talk if they can. Sometimes this is done with people that they can't talk, they're at that place. And you can tell, though, they're anxious, they may be a little fearful. We at the bedside often will hold a hand. Okay, I'm going to stop the share. You would hold a hand usually at the bedside or wherever. But when you can't do that, again, anchoring your own heart or anchoring someone else. But it's just a really good technique. And most importantly, is that connection. It's a way for them to be validated. It's calming, and a way for you to calm yourself.
God, I could even imagine using that with a scared kid, that
Oh,
very
yes.
cool contact of
Yes.
just, shh,
Yes.
you know,
Yes.
and I'm here with you. I'm not leaving you. You're okay. I
Yes.
love that. Thank you so much. That's really powerful. The anchoring heart. I will post that in the blog for sure, so
Okay.
folks can see that, see how it's done, and remind themselves. Maybe put it up somewhere if you're going to need it, because it's important to check in and take care of yourself.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
We're not
Yeah.
done. Like, this is going to happen. Like, this is happening. So,
And it's a whole nother story. I could give you, like, the way you devise a workout you can do at home, the way you can engage with kids at home. But that's that therapist hat. But yes,
I love it.
anyway.
Okay, well, are there any questions from anybody? I think you have a fan club on in the meeting today. Are there any questions from anybody, or just want to say a thank you or a hell yeah?
You know, I have something to say.
I love it.
No, I just wanted to thank Andrea because I shared with you that early 2019, within 80 days, we lost both my mom and my dad, and Andrea was there, with the thing with my mom as a support group, and then she was with us with my dad. So she's been a big part of my sister and I's lives. And you know, full disclosure, I shared with you, she is my one-on-one therapist. And it's been really great because when I was down in the Central Valley, I popped in on there. I suggested she do Zoom because of what you were doing. And so she did that. And I jumped in. And even last night, I drove out to Pacific Grove and showed him the sunset as we were doing group last night. So my group therapy here in Monterey is closed down. And so I'm sharing with them. And I just thank Andrea for everything she does, not just for my family, but all the families that she's dealing with. And now she's dealing with it herself. I had never seen that, the sharing heart thing. So that was a really good thing. I'd never seen that. So I just want to thank her for everything she's done for everybody down in the Central Valley.
Thank you.
Donna, you recommended a very good person. I can see why. Wait, now I'm so paranoid about how to say your name. I'm going to call you Andy. I can see why that feels right to me somehow. Yeah, I can see why you said you got to get Andy on, because she's got something in it. And I could tell from the first moment I talked to her on the phone that she had this presence and calm. I can absolutely understand as a counselor, Andy, how you touch people, because you have this confidence and this calm that comes through, which I think is really reassuring and provides strength. So thank you. It's just really powerful.
Passed down from the elders, passed down from my family. When you see me, you truly see my mother, my grandmother, my sisters, my family. It's community. And then it reflects the other people, the people that I'm working with.
You know, I really like that. If there's a takeaway today, as we're dealing with loss, the idea of instead it's actually how we've come together as humans. Our own identity is the bringing together of all the people that have touched us. You know, we're made of all the stuff of the people we've loved, even, you know, friends and acquaintances and everybody we've loved that has touched us, has shaped and made us who we are. So I love that that's how you intentionally come forward and present yourself. Like, I bring all the goodness with me.
Oh man. Yeah.
And I think another thing with our group is we all say when we're together, whether it's their group or my group here, you're with people that get it. And Jennifer, it reminds me a lot, especially your podcast yesterday with Chris, which was very powerful. I listened to it last night, is that you guys have that as well. For all of you that are survivors of the Golden State Killer. And I shared that story with Andrea, your background and your loss of your dad and stepmom, that it's a place where you all go because those people you're with, they get what everybody went through.
They get it.
And it's like with us with grief, everybody they get it.
Yeah, I think until you decide to really open yourself to it and feel it, you don't understand the power of it. But once you let it in, it's like, I can't imagine a life without it now. So I always say my life changed since the arrest because of the survivors of all things. But that it in a weird way even repaired my relationship with my dad and my stepmom. So all those things, just that, you have to let it in, though. You have to be willing to let it come.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And another thing that happens is she starts the group, but she very rarely interjects because it gets going and everybody plays off of one another, what they're feeling. Oh, I feel that too. And it takes over a life of its own, which is what it's meant to do.
Right. And that shared experience we're all sharing a horrible experience with COVID. And yet there's these stories of how it's bringing us together, and the stories of these healthcare workers who are they're heroes, but they get reinforced from one another. They see each other be strong. Like, it's stunning to me. And I'm so glad we're tuning into it, because I feel like we need to, if we're going to help our country and help where we're going and our kids that are just young right now, we have to tune into this stuff. We have got to start living with much more awareness.
Well, and I was going to, Andrea, too, I was going to suggest that you watch Jen's podcast from Monday, and then this coming Monday, because she gave us an exercise to do. And as I was listening to her on Monday, I really feel it can be used maybe in group for people of what you always say the purpose is, what our purpose is as we go through our journey, to help people decide what their purpose is maybe. So you might want to check out Monday's podcast, because it's kind of about self-branding, but as I was listening to
I was
Jen, I was like,
definitely
oh,
gonna
this would be
watch that.
perfect
Yeah.
for the group, maybe, to as far as grief goes.
Donna, you're so hired. But it's about intention, it's about
No.
awareness, and it's about being purposeful. So
Well, my son is actually gonna start looking at him. He's in Oregon, my youngest, and he's an entrepreneur. He made me think of the one guy on there a whole lot. I forget his Ron, I think it was. But
yes, Ron Johnson, yeah.
he kind of popped out at me when I was looking at this. But anyway, because he made me think of my son. Anyway, he's gonna start watching them too. So you're gonna get out there because yeah, it was very powerful.
Yeah, Ron's he's a great guy. And we talked, interestingly, after Ron was on this show, I went on his podcast and we ended up talking about confidence and insecurity. And it was shocking to me how much a 39-year-old Black man and a 58-year-old white woman had similar childhoods that shaped us. And it was around confidence and insecurity. And I thought, we're not different. This is just driving. I mean, we have different experiences, of course, but at our core, in our being, there's so much in common. And that there's a link to that additional podcast on Ron Johnson's page in my blog. So middle of the conversation, I'm like, holy crap, this is a powerful conversation we're having. Like, wow. And even the woman he does the podcast with, who's his girlfriend, but she was like, I just shut up because you two just lit it up. But it just happened, chemistry, it was a moment, like one of those moments where you just get chills and go, wow.
Yeah.
So thanks, Donna, for the connecting the dots. Yeah, this is all related. The meta is all about intention and awareness, and for me, doing good. And it's just that's how we're going to start to see people separated here. It's going to be the people who want to really do good and make change, and the people who don't care. And I'm done with them. Like I want them to hear the story, but if they can't join us, we got to move on, because those of us who are ready to do good and go change the world are ready. We're ready.
Just got to keep doing it.
That's right. Keep slogging ahead. Andrea, thank you so much for coming today. This was great. I really appreciate it. And I can't wait to get it posted and share with everybody, because I think that these words will help people in a time when it's really crazy.
I hope so. And just know, and when you'll have it on there, if people would like to join, they can do the email. They can contact me through email. I can reach out to them, because through Adventist Health, we can do community bereavement, and reaching out to others. And I'm not opposed to that. Like I say, I'm in this to provide soul care. So
thank you. Well, I'm going to verify all that with you, and then I'll get on the blog and make sure people know how to reach you. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming today. I feel better. This has been a hard morning. I feel really good right now. I want to thank everybody for coming, and I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful weekend. However you're doing Passover, Easter, whatever you're celebrating, do it mindfully, and remember those who have gone before us. They're here too.
Yes.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.